you will have this conversation later on, but unless maybe you wanted to ask the question later on, but I think generally people are very obsessed with results.
Yeah.
First day at gym, you're already looking at your biceps.
And they have all these mirrors. So it's like,
exactly. They have all these mirrors, First day of gym, you're already going to the scale. First day of gym, you're already flexing your muscles. You think you can. You be committed to the process. If you go to the gym and say, I want to have nice, clean reps, perfect reps, that's going to be your focus. Over time, that's going to add up to become results ultimately. The same with your marks. Enter with the mentality that, okay, I need to make sure that today, break it down day by day. Today, I need to be productive. I need to cover all the work I set out to do. I need to do all the cases that I set out to do. I need to do all the lectures that I set out to do.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Emerging Champions. With us today is Mr. Christopher Tobaiwa. His bio is too long, but I'll give you a brief introduction. When I was thinking about the Emerging Champions idea, Chris was one of the first people that came into my mind because, he has been an inspiration, he has achieved a lot, and a lot of people look up to him, especially in the law faculty, humanities department, and other faculties which are not the ones mentioned. We have worked together and have been in the same classes. I've been impressed by his leadership and commitment. And that's why I thought he's an emerging champion. He will also be on other episodes. But however, Mr. Christopher Tobaiwa is a final year Bachelor of Laws student at Rhodes University. Throughout his university career, he has reached several milestones, such as being recognized as a top 4 performer in the law faculty in the year of 2019. In the year of 2019, he earned himself the Investec Top 100 Award. He has retained his position on the Dean's List for the past 3 years, averaging 7 distinctions a year, and has also received half colors for academic excellence. He has also been recognized by his hall as a top performer by attaining the award for Best Academic Performer in Desmond Tutu Hall, second years in 2019, and also received the award for commitment to community engagement. In the same year, he also received the Golden Key Member Merit Award and the Undergraduate Merit Scholarship for demonstrating outstanding leadership, academic performance, and commitment to service. Mr. Tobaiwa has also held several leadership positions, such as Vice Chairperson of the Zimbabwe Limited Society for 2019 and 2020, head student for his house in the same year. He was also appointed as a law tutor in 2020 and currently serves as the graduate assistant for the law faculty. He is also the chairperson of the Golden Key, Rhodes University chapter, vice chairperson of the Law Society at Rhodes University, and subwarden of Cullen Bowes House. He also is an institutional forum co-opt. The commitment to leadership started in high school, like almost every emerging champion, where he held several leadership positions at national level and was recognized as top 2 public speakers at provincial level. In his spare time, Mr. Tobaiwa makes music and creates digital content for a page that he recently found, with the intention of sharing knowledge with other African law students on how to tackle law school while avoiding burnout and having a social life. He's a tech enthusiast. He carries a bag with headphones. He's a tech enthusiast, basketball enthusiast, and martial arts enthusiast, and dedicates significant hours satiating those interests. Mr. Tobaiwa believes that in life, no one is just meant to be one thing. Therefore, as much as you have your core business or profession, other aspects of life should not be neglected. He's also a dedicated leader who seeks to improve productivity of team members. Thank you. So today with us we have Miss Kekana as well and Mr. Christopher Tobaiwa. Thank you. So who is Mr. Christopher Tobaiwa? What inspires and motivates you?
That's a tough one. First of all, thank you for having me, and awesome introduction. I didn't know that you were still talking about me because I was just like also a bit shocked midway. But thank you so much. So who's Christopher Tobaiwa and what inspires him? To be honest, I think as you said, in life you can't be one thing. That's why you're endowed with so many gifts that usually you ignore because you're taught to do one thing at a time. That's what has been drilled in us since primary school. Like back in the day, if you were good at a sport, you probably hear something along the lines of, no, focus on school or don't do sports or else you're going to fail or something like that. But I think from a very young age, I've always been inspired by, my drive to just be excellent at everything that I put my hands on. Anything that I try to make sure that I was the absolute best that I could be. And I think a lot of that came from, just the primary school that I went to, first and foremost. It wasn't one of those schools where there were so many people, where it was ultra competitive. There were very few people at that school. And then you had to compete with bigger schools, which means your face had to feature in different activities a lot more frequently. Me hating to lose, I would make sure that each and everything that I put my face and name to would actually do extremely well. So I think that was one of the things that just didn't wash away as soon as I went to high school. Obviously in high school now, this is now a competitive environment where it's competitive internally. So now everything that you put your face to again needs to be at par. And by the time that I finished high school, I think it became a part of me. I think at some point, you become what you ultimately repeat. Like if you make excellence a habit, you become excellent. That becomes your definition. So I think that's what inspires me, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much. You mentioned competitiveness. Wow. And you mentioned primary school, you mentioned high school, and my next question. Okay, at first you mentioned you came from a small primary school, but you being competitive and also the culture they had, you had to compete against bigger schools. My next question is, being at one of the best schools in Zimbabwe, when it comes to producing leaders and academic excellence, how did it shape you and how did you fare in such an environment?
That's a good question. So if I'm being honest, I'm not going to lie to you. First, because in high school in Zimbabwe, it's typically 6 years. First 4 years, we call that O levels, which is basically your ordinary levels. And then you've got 2 additional years, which are A levels. I think those who do Cambridge in South Africa are quite familiar with that format. I'll go as far as saying that in my first 4 years of high school, I was quite mediocre, above average at best. And to be honest, I don't know how it came to be, but when I got to the high school, at first I was quite focused. I was quite competitive, but as time went on, just seeing a lot of smart people in the same place was a bit intimidating, and ultimately I ended up not focusing my talents in one particular place so that I could be the best at that one thing. I tried diversifying. And the problem with that, I guess, which is the downside maybe to doing a lot of things, is sometimes if you're not really careful, you might not dedicate in as much time as people are. Because I could tell you that there were guys who were there for one thing. I want my books. They would do extremely well. It got to a point where I just became comfortable. First 4 years of high school, like I wasn't really putting in that much work, but I was getting by. Like I was getting marks, I was passing, I was moving on to the next thing, and it was a very terrible attitude to have in hindsight. But at the time, we're growing up,
so it seemed like a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. So now, at first I was just getting by, but then I think I had some kind of shift when I got back into A levels. Number one, I was now doing things that I actually wanted to do, because in A level, you actually specialize in the field that you want to carry on in. Whereas in O level, they forced me to write. I'll say forced, but it was more coercive, because they're like, no, you're smart. You can do this. There's no need for you to drop a subject. They forced me to write 13 subjects. Among those, chemistry, which I completely detested. But I really appreciate the art. That's why I respect people who do chemistry and do well in it. killed it in some of the courses like physics, computer science. I was doing well in those, but in A level I really got into, my zone. Like that was me. That was me. I felt like, okay, this is what I'm all about, and I really started taking up more activities as well. I started being as competitive as I was in primary school again. I reignited that fire. I just could not stand losing to any person. I was the type of person who would say that losing doesn't start from the back; it starts from the front. So once you become number 2, you've already lost. That's the mentality that I had at the time. Not always a healthy mentality, but it at least helped me stay up there in the top 3 year in, year out. So yeah.
All right, thank you. So, you mentioned the first thing you mentioned ultra competitiveness in the first question. And then, it seemed like your life, you always have to be the best. You want to be the best because, you're not comfortable with being second best. And a lot of people have the same attitude because that's what separates the best from the ones who are just good. So, but also you mentioned that it's not a healthy mentality to have. So how do you strike a balance? How do you strike that rare balance of being competitive and still winning, but still have that good mental health and not maybe feel toxic? And how do you strike that rare balance?
Okay, so to be honest, I think what people need to understand is that competitiveness should be, well, I use competitiveness to eliminate excuses. That's how I use competitiveness. So sometimes you really sit in that zone where you're like, this is too hard. I can't do this. And then someone else does it. You're like, what? Yep. Nah, there's no way. I could do that. I could do that. Exactly that. And that's how it has helped me, go forward. I don't let competitiveness take away from my accomplishments. So if, for example, I become second, I'm not going to be hurt because someone else came first. Your win is not going to take away my joy. As long as I feel like, I've done my best and I've reached my potential, I'm in the league of the elite, then most of the time I'm not going to fuss too much about positions, statistics, as long as I believe that, okay, you know what, you did extremely well. You did your absolute best, and you are in the competition and you're among the best. Really, I think that's where it ends for me.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back to something about you coming from a small town, and Vanessa, you were telling me something about intelligence and
and genetic predisposition. Do you think that maybe your intelligence or maybe like your will to always be at, the top, do you think it's like a genetic predisposition, or is it like an acquired thing? Or do you think it was just in you,
That's a good question. But to be honest, I think genetics do have something to do with it, but genetics can only take you so far.
Sure.
Both my parents are smart, so I wouldn't want to say in front of camera that it's not genetics.
Yeah, you don't want to take away from, don't want to lie.
Yeah, but they're really smart. They're really smart individuals. I think they both had different impacts in terms of how they shaped my upbringing. So my mom is an excellent communicator, and I think that's where I got that aspect, because my mom, when it comes to speaking English. Or any language for that matter, even Shona, my mom is an absolute, she knows what she's talking about. And, it was in the small corrections in the house. If you said something that was grammatically unacceptable, you'd get a slight correction on some, no, sorry, it's actually this, not that. But then, as time went on, I became well accustomed to that. My dad, on the other side, he was a very pragmatic person in terms of, number one, mental toughness. Number two, strategic thinking. He was just one of those guys who were like, he made it easier to execute something. He made he had this dedication to the process that could produce the best results possible. And I think he's also very good with people. So I think I got that aspect of intelligence from them. But if we're talking about proficiency in my field, which is law. That's something that I wanted to do particularly. Then I think that's where I had my role to play.
Yeah.
Because there's certain things that obviously can't be carried over because none of them were really lawyers. So I had to then, use those things that I got maybe from them and
to build.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned, about your father, you mentioned dedication to the process, mental toughness. But, and I want to come back to this because, I understand that you're from Kwekwe, which is a small mining town in Zimbabwe. And it seems like a lot of people from these small towns, especially the mining towns, they have this mental toughness, dedication to the process. Is it something that is there because of the situation in Zimbabwe, or is there some form of gravy in these small towns that that brings about this mental toughness, dedication to the process? Because I think you have that mental toughness. When you're doing those all-nighters in the library, you're dedicated to the process of making yourself one of the best law students because you work for it. So what's in these small towns, these small mining towns?
Because they also say a village raises a child.
Yes.
So what is it in the community?
It's in the water. It's in the water. Something. Yeah, but I think to answer your question, that's a very good question. Personally, I can't speak for everyone else, and I can't. Yeah, generally, I always try to speak for myself. So, I think the thing about small towns, and I think this is something that manifested once I actually made it to high school. Being from a small town, you're kind of written off as soon as you arrive at a place where, for example, people have been in a big city. I remember in high school, I used to be the butt of the joke in so many occurrences, because obviously, like most of the people that I went to school with at the time were from the capital. So everyone who was doing something was from the capital, and you were extremely cool if you were from the capital because you knew what was going on, you knew what Joiner City was, you knew what this particular show is all about, and all of that stuff. We didn't have that, So when you had to find a way to be talked about, or to fit in conversations where people are talking about people that are doing big things. So I think it came from just the need to prove yourself and show them that, look, I get that you're from a big city. Oh, that's cool. But we also have some source. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I always used to derive a lot of inspiration from my seniors at the time who came from the same small town as me, who were doing extremely well. We always had this code that we used, like whenever I saw someone from my hometown, it was homeboy, how's this going? You did this, well done, this and that. So there was some form of camaraderie, like we stuck together, and it was that thing where if I saw a junior from my hometown, I would make sure that by all means they really get known for something. So there was that mentorship aspect as well. There was just a need to prove myself and just put my place on the map, to show them that, hey, look, we're not to be played with. So I think that's where it comes from. Apart from that, I don't really know what else you can attribute it to, because I think in terms of difficulty of conditions, I think right now Zim is pretty uniform. If we're talking about how maybe things aren't going as well for everyone, but I think that's from my analysis how we got to be mentally tough. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. There's this saying that says dynamite come in small packages. Kwekwe is a small package which contributes a lot to the Mashonaland area, Zimbabwe and all that. But also, you being from a small town, believe it or not, you have been exploding in this university space, be it in leadership, community engagement, academic excellence, and you are an emerging champion. You are a dynamite that is blowing up. But then, again, being from a small and humble town such as Kwekwe, what experiences have you taken? I know you've answered this part of, but maybe we want an analysis from Kwekwe directly. What experiences have you taken from Kwekwe and that you still keep with you?
Oh, okay. First of all, I think back in Quaker, I was used to walking around everywhere. So when I came to Grahamstown, that's everyone's complaining about the walks uphill. I'm like, oh, daily bread, like, daily bread. What are you talking about? But I think generally the practices in Quaker, I think Quaker, what people don't know about Quaker is that the people there are very nice. They're very, I don't know, they're very kind. It's a small town. And people know people. So sometimes you never know you're going to be rude to. You might be rude to someone who's friends with a friend of your parents, and things just blow up. But ultimately, I think my attitude in terms of how I interact with people, the respect that I give individuals, no matter, what position you're in, I think it comes from my hometown. That's the biggest contributor, I think, to my demeanor. Because I think that's one thing that's synonymous with my hometown. Like we're really generally very easygoing, nice people, and we interact with people quite well. In terms of work ethic, I think, Quaker people are hardworking, but I think the same can be said about any person from Zim. I think that's a national, treasure. Just the work ethic. It's in the blood. But ultimately, I think that's it. Like just the demeanor, the way that I speak to people, the way that I respect people. I think Kwekwe had a really, really big part to play in that. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So after high school and passing with flying colors, what was the dream for Mr. Christopher Tobaiwa, and what made you come to South Africa?
Oh, okay. This is a very interesting one. So, to be honest, first and foremost, I really didn't see my dream past the Zim border. Like genuinely, I thought, okay, now it's very simple. I'm gonna, finish my A-levels, go to University of Zim, do my Bachelor of Law, and then just get into the industry right away. That was my plan. It was as simple as that. But unfortunately, in my A-levels, there's one subject I didn't get an A in. And at the time in Zim, they wanted straight A's for the law programs. So I applied obviously to University of Zimbabwe. They gave me a different program. They gave me like political science. And I was like, nah. And then I then applied to another uni there. They just said, nah, we're only taking like 20 people. So we're already full. I'm not gonna talk too much about the selection criteria and some of the unis. I have a big problem with it. That sometimes they only look at the results. They don't look at the person holistically, which is something that they have to work on. But that's a conversation for another day. But got rejected there. Went to another uni. So this is 3 unis now. Got rejected, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm not meant to do law. Maybe I should just cut my losses. Let me just this is it. And then this one time I was sleeping at home. At that time, like I really didn't know what was gonna go on. Like I didn't know what the options were. My uncle was actually traveling to another city, and then he passed through my town early in the morning, 6 o'clock. He wakes me up. We sit on the couch, and then he starts grilling me about my aspirations for the future. I tell him about all these rejections, and he said, "Okay, so what are you doing about it?" And I didn't have an answer. And then he said, "Then you haven't done enough. Like you're grown now. Like you really can't just wait around and wait for something to miraculously happen. You need to start making some kind of moves. Have you thought about leaving the country? Have you thought about going overseas? There are people that are getting scholarships out there. Have you ever tried applying for any of those?" And to be fair, I hadn't. To be honest, I was so hell bent on Zim. This is it right here. But clearly I was mistaken. And then I just started applying around different places. And, my dad actually sat me down and he said, "Look, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to do law." And he said, "Okay, it's fine. So get a place that will give you a law degree and we'll try and make it happen for you." I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah." "Okay, thank you so much. Okay, let's, now we're going somewhere. So now, I wanted to apply to University of Pretoria because UP was my first choice. Also thought about Northwest. But then I didn't even have a passport at the time. Like I didn't think about leaving that's how that's how serious I was about staying in Zim at the time. Didn't even have a passport because I was like, what am I gonna need it for?
Yeah, I'm
not going anywhere. And then so right off the bat, UP said you can't apply without a passport. Northwest, you can't apply without a passport. And I was like, you know what? Let me try Rhodes. I knew about Rhodes because, I knew some people who had come to Rhodes from my old school. And funny enough, in high school in 2016, I actually held the applications paper for Rhodes. I actually wanted to apply to Rhodes, but then I just ended up not doing it because I was like, but nah, don't make any backups. You've got your main plan. It's going to work out. And okay, so I applied to Rhodes. 2-3 days, I got my response. They're like, yeah, cool. And then I was like, okay, fine. They gave me the list of the papers that I had to fill in. And I told them, look, I don't have a passport. So what do I do? They're like, nah, just give us the documents that you have for now. And then we'll update them once your passport comes out. And then that's when I knew that, okay, I think this place is meant for me. Let me hold on to that. So, from there, I think it was just that was the place to be. So I can't really say that I chose South Africa. South Africa kind of chose me. So that's how I ultimately decided to come to SA.
It sounds like you had a divine encounter with God.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I actually wanted to say that.
Because today at church, though, it was talking about having an encounter with God, and it sounds like in the midst of all that was happening, someone was sent there to open your eyes to these possibilities, and look at you now.
I actually really believe that. And I've always said this, and I tell this to so many people, especially right now where people are, most of my classmates are looking to get into the job industry, getting into the job market. Things might be, a bit difficult at the moment, but I genuinely believe that ultimately this time next year, you'll be where exactly you're supposed to be. You'll be at the place that's meant for you, where you are going to make the highest amount of impact. Some places are just meant to be pit stops as well. You also need to understand that. And they're just part of the journey. So I always let my faith take me a bit further than I can plan. Because we really can't imagine every possibility. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned, the conversation with your uncle, where he was asking you about your aspiration. You mentioned about your father, your mother. So who is your role model?
Oh, that's easy. My dad. That's so easy.
Okay, that was quick.
That's it's usually the moms.
The thing is, I've thought about it, and it's such a crazy thing because my dad he didn't get the upbringing that most people got at his time. He grew up in a rural area, they had to build the village, the rural homestead from scratch. He was so young when the war was brewing in Zim, and he didn't have nearly as many opportunities as we've had. But then, regardless of that, he still managed to fight his way through all of that and send his child to a good university without he himself having the privilege to actually attend one of these prestigious unis. So he's really my role model because I think ultimately we view heroes differently in the society. I think our focus, because of celebrity obsession, we always think about heroes that are very far from us, that do things that put so much pressure on us that we really can't imagine how we're going to get to that level. And it's daunting because someone's going to see a Range Rover, people buying 5 Range Rovers at the same time, and they think it's practical just like that. But I think his heroism can be derived from the fact that, from absolutely nothing, from the most difficult of circumstances, he managed to create, an extreme amount of resources for him and his children to get, to benefit from. I think it ultimately goes down to, as we were making biblical references, the talents. I judge someone's ability by the ability to convert one small talent into something extremely big. So if you can make an extremely big project out of just a few cents, to me, that's extremely honorable. In comparison to maybe someone who gets a few $1 million and then ultimately becomes a multimillionaire. Because I think the margins of success as you go up, like, the richer are just going to get richer.
Yeah.
So if you have an advantage, it's going to keep multiplying. Whereas if you don't have an advantage at all, sometimes the gradient is very steady, it's very straight, and then it gradually rises. And, it's not as easy. Yeah. So I really give, like my dad has all the props there. He has all the props.
Man, like, as you were talking about your dad, about, him coming from a rural area and creating something from nothing. Well, I don't know. For me, that was deep and personal because I think a lot of people from Zimbabwe, be it your father as well, be it your grandfather, my father, my mother, their grandparents, Vanessa's parents, everyone. I think I don't know. I think maybe for us being Black, I don't know, but we kind of resonate to, our parents creating something from nothing. Even their parents trying to create something from nothing. And, I think I've had this conversation with a lot of people about how, our parents, like you mentioned, they never had the opportunity, to sometimes to go maybe to the best of high schools but high school is not important, but, to send us to a great university just so that we can create something out of our lives, to give us that opportunity that they didn't have. So I think that was really important because that's reality. That's the reality. Because the thing is, we tend to look at heroes from overseas, America, whatnot, but then we have the heroes, in our lives, and that's why I mentioned, when I asked about your role models, because you talked about your uncle, and that conversation he had with you. That's real life, bro. Like that's him saying, son, what's happening with your life? You need to move on. So I think, thank you so much for raising that. But I don't know, do you have anything else to add on?
No, at first, when he started and he was talking about how you're using your talents to do a lot of things, I was just thinking that he's speaking like a millionaire. You know how millionaires on YouTube, get up, do this and do that. So then I was just thinking that, like, your uncle did more than any of those people could have done for you. Anyone out of maybe your immediate space of influence could have told you, you can just do this, or you can just, like, they wouldn't have given you what he gave you that day or, that time, So I was just thinking that, these people close to home or at home probably do more for us than all those people that we look up to overseas.
That's true. That's 100%
true. Okay. All right. So I just want to move on to the law bit. So what does a day look like for Christopher Tobaiwa, who is a final year LLB student and a graduate assistant?
Whew. Okay, this is a very interesting one because I think my days don't look the same anymore. They used to, but then I think currently, I've had to learn how to, obviously, number one, being someone who works with a routine, but also being able to adjust as the day goes by. Because before you start happening to the day happens to you. So back in the day, I think there was one of the posts that I had on my page, the law page, that went semi-viral. The 5 o'clock routine, 5 a.m. routine.
No, that was good. I remember, like, I'm not gonna lie, like, sorry to catch you, but that was really good because I remember I sent you like a whole lot of messages. I'm like, bro, this is so good. You can do that with like economic students, and because that was I don't know, like it was reality.
It was like a blueprint to success.
That was really good. But
yeah. So the thing is, the reason why I say that my days don't look the same is that I'm a productivity enthusiast. I pride myself in being that. And that means you need to continuously experiment to see what works the most for you. So currently, I'm not waking up at 5 as I was doing last year. I saw how well that worked, right? But then this year, I was like, you know what? Let me try something different. These days, I wake up anytime from 6 to 7. So that hour is my wake up window. Try to make it 6 most of the time. Obviously shower, etc. I don't eat breakfast because I'm trying to get on this intermittent fasting thing. The science behind that is I like the science behind that because apparently when you don't consume as much food, especially in the morning, if you leave a 16-hour window between meals, right, from the time that you eat supper to the next day that you eat lunch, your body starts, using up fats as opposed to the sugar that you consume usually in the morning. And also, I'm not going to get into the too sciencey bit, but then in a nutshell, there's some chemicals that get released that enhance your level of concentration and attentiveness. But then for me, practically speaking, it's more about the way that I just feel lighter when I haven't eaten in the morning. I don't want to feel a bit too full as the day starts. And then, so it also comes just from the instinct that who's more ambitious to catch an animal? A hunter who has just had a nice meal back home or a hunter who's hungry. So a hungry hunter is going to go out there. He's looking for that thing intently. So I really take that same attitude. So start working around 7 immediately. The first 3 hours of your day are usually the most important, where you need to do, the most important work. In fact, the hardest work. As you know, the saying that says, if you want to eat a frog, eat it in the morning.
Bro, where are you getting all this saying?
Like if you have to eat a frog, you'd rather do that in the morning because trust me, nothing worse is going to happen during the day. So if you've got a lot of work, if you've got something that you are dreading, if you've got an assignment that you are dreading, if you have, a task that you've been thinking about all week, do it the first thing in the morning because it's going to give you mental clarity once you offload that burden. So from then I do those high level tasks that require the highest amount of focus. Then from around 10, my day starts looking a bit more chilled. I'm just doing lectures at this point. I go for lunch anywhere around 12 to 1, depending on how much work I wanted to cover during that time. Hit my lunch, come back to the library. In the afternoon, it's usually doing lectures and reading cases. Excuse me, because I believe that it requires less levels of concentration as opposed to just reading straight, trying to accumulate the knowledge. Going through cases for me has become something routine. It's something that comes with the territory. So I do that in the afternoon usually. Then, after like supper, obviously around 5, have my supper, come back to the library, study until around 9 or whenever the library is closing. I like to call this, because I hit the library at 9 every single day. So I like to call it the 9 to 9. Just 9 to 9. And then after that library session, no one can tell me what to do. If I wanted to watch a show, I'm going to do so unapologetically. It's just that I've started this new model of trying to be more sustainable. Of course, I understand that probably next year when I start working, I'm going to, the stakes are going to be higher. So I might not have as much freedom as I have now. So sometimes at night, like after 9, 10, usually I'm just catching up with friends. I'm watching a show. I'm doing some work on my page, the Careers Connect page. And I'm also currently trying to get into writing, trying to put all my thoughts and experiences about law school into one composite document and then being able to hopefully sell it at a very affordable price.
I was going to ask if we're ever going to read it.
You will, but at a very small price, because obviously I think already the law degree is as what's the word? Unaccessible as can be, and you want to make knowledge as accessible as possible. But then obviously you're going to need a bit of money to help you maybe grow the project and hopefully embark on a bigger project as time goes on. So but ultimately that's what the day looks like. I always say that if I can get everything that I set out to do, in that particular day, I consider that day a success. It's not by any other standard from any other person who might be working harder than me, because I don't think I'm the most hardworking person in my class, but I only do what I think is sufficient for me. And so the system is very much, well-oiled, because at the end of the week, I do my weekly review. So I go back into the week. Is there anything that I haven't covered from this week? Okay, I identify the areas that I haven't covered. Make sure that I do all of them by that weekend, so that I don't have any, debt that I have from the previous weekend. I need to start the week on a clean slate each and every time, because that's, again, mental clarity. You don't want your mind to be constantly cluttered. Your mind needs to be extremely free. You don't need to make it, clogged up with work that you haven't done. So always starting the week on a clean slate then helps me make sure that I don't leave all my work for the last minute.
Yeah. You mentioned something about, you being a productivity enthusiast. And I remember having a conversation as well. And, someone was telling me the same thing that you mentioned about, from whether you wake up at 7 or 8, but, there's a large period of time from 8 a.m. up to like lunchtime, which is 1. So they were just saying, if you put 3 hours or 2.5 hours of hard work, and then after lunch from 2 up until 4 or 2 up until half 4, you put in another significant shift, and then from after supper, so that's probably around from 7 until 12, you just put in maybe 3 hours again. So we're saying, that's, that would have been productive. So you can just, like what you're saying, like you can just alter it based on yourself. Can you work in the evening? Can you work late on during the day? And just oil that based on you. You used to do all-nighters in the library. I don't know if you're still doing those. Where you would work from, I don't know, man, like you would work from maybe after supper, so from maybe 8 or 9, I don't know. And then until 5, 6, 7 the following day, and then maybe you go sleep and then you come back at 2 p.m. Do you still do those, and how did you stay motivated, and what kept you going, especially in those cold, lonely, and quiet nights in the library?
Those days, good old days.
Before you start, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
You know how there's procrastination, and when people go to the library, usually it's with the intent that I'm going there to study, I'm going to do work, all-nighters especially. Then people get there, YouTube will take 2 hours of your time. How did you overcome that? If that ever happened to you, how did you manage to reach your goals?
That's a good question. Okay, so I'll start with Riko's question, and then I'll answer it in the same address. So I don't do all-nighters as frequently as I used to, because I think, as I said, I think sustainability is an important thing. That at some point you need to look for a model that works when done repeatedly. During that time, I think the reason why I was doing all-nighters is because what can I say? The circumstances demanded it. You get what I mean? I think you need to be able to have your default needs to be sustainable. But as I said, mental toughness really counts, because you need to be able to say, okay, if it's time for me to pull an all-nighter, I'll pull an all-nighter. Currently, I'll pull in, these days, I'll pull an all-nighter every now and then. When I feel like, Chris, this week hasn't gone as well as you wanted it to, we need to do this work by the end of today. Or if it means we're going to take an all-nighter, so be it. And I always say we, when I'm talking to myself, because obviously there's me. I'm also talking to God. I'm like, we need to work from this time until this time, because if we don't do that, we're in trouble. I think sometimes it's just a silent invocation of God in everything that you do. Sometimes I just have candid conversations like, God, today we need to work, But ultimately, what kept me motivated during that time was, number one, my friends. My friends were serious, guys. I'm not going to lie. I think we had a clique, a crew, a network, I'd like to call it, and we're still close to this day. We would work so hard together. Every single time we'd be together in that library, just going through the work. And it was quite enjoyable in that sometimes we would laugh at our L's. So if someone started, dozing off, we'd take videos. Like to this day, I have videos of people, my friends, obviously, falling asleep during those long nights and stuff like that. So we had this support system where it wasn't so much driven. It wasn't driven by motivation or will. It was discipline. It was automatic at that point. It was an unsaid contract. Literally every single night after the library closes, we'd just find ourselves outside the door. We didn't need to communicate that. Everyone knew what was up. I think it was more discipline than motivation. That's all I'll say, because I think motivation is never sufficient.
Yeah.
It'll get you to start, but discipline will get you to continue. Because I mean, how many things have we started and just left midway because we lacked discipline and consistency? So I think I'll attribute discipline and consistency to that, drive during that time when we're pulling the all-nighters. Now, addressing the procrastination question, I think I also had a problem with procrastination. During that time that I was doing all-nighters, sometimes I'd spend an hour just watching videos. But also, thing is, with procrastination, I always say this, there are two rationalizations to procrastination, both of which are very flawed. The first rationalization is, this work is so easy, I'll just do it towards the end, right? The second rationalization is, this work is so hard, I need more time to think. Both of these things are flawed. Number one, the first rationalization, if it's so easy, just do it now and get it off the way. So that's not on a logical basis, it's not a really good, rationale for procrastination. The second one, that this is so hard that I'll do it later. Or this is so hard that I need more time to think. An assignment does not need thinking, it needs doing. So you can only, tackle whatever assignment it is by actually doing it. And I think the only way to battle procrastination, to be honest, is to be very rapid. And I call it there's some people who have what they call the 5-second rule. When you wake up, first 5 seconds, get out of bed. You can apply that same model into your life. Like as soon as you sit on a table, it's everything is off. Everything is, it's complete silence. That's why I like using the library, because it separates business from pleasure. So when I wake up in the morning, walk down to the library, I know as soon as I'm getting in that zone, we're now here for business. We're not playing.
Yeah.
So, I have my headphones on, noise cancelling, to make sure that I don't hear anything else that's going on. And I sit down, and then, I work. And once I work and I feel like, okay, no, this is good, let me take a break. I can take a break unapologetically. So I can watch a YouTube video without any guilt. I can talk to my friends without any guilt. But I think the idea, I think this guy calls it, or people call it the Pomodoro format, that you need to stack your productivity hours into intervals. So if you say, okay, I'm going to be productive for an hour, go maybe 45 minutes nonstop, 15 minutes break. 45 minutes nonstop, 15-minute break. In that 15-minute break, do whatever the hell you want. As a reward. Ultimately, if you do that, you'll find that, oh, wow, 5 hours have passed.
I've actually done
and I've done something. I've done a lot of work. And ultimately, I think that's the best way to eliminate procrastination. Just being able to say, okay, but sometimes, again, there's some people who might have attention deficiencies. And sometimes if you try some of these methods and you feel like they're still not working, then it might be time to see someone who might be able to help. Because I do understand that sometimes it's not everyone who just does it out of, those two rationalizations that I just mentioned.
And sometimes it's just not one of those days. Sometimes you're just drained,
Yeah, it's definitely.
Okay, so an average of 7 distinctions a year. What is the secret there? Is it only hard work, or maybe you have to listen in class when the lecturer is saying this is important for the exam, or what's the secret there?
And don't give the generic, it's time management.
Let me tell you the truth. If I'm being honest with you, first and foremost, me being a person of faith, I genuinely believe that ultimately God is there. Like he's guiding me through the process. And that's one thing that I'm very unapologetic about. You need to, I make sure that I'm very firm with my convictions. And I think that should be the same for everyone who's got a belief that they hold. They need to make sure that they hold it all the way, because ultimately that's what's going to help. So first of all, my mindset is already on, to be honest, God is not associated with failure. So definitely failure is not an option. But then also I think in terms of the process, number one, it starts with the mindset. From the beginning of the semester, because I think the problem is people think, okay, distinctions are made in exams. No, that's not when distinctions are made. Distinctions are made at the beginning of the semester when you set targets. When you start the semester, don't think, okay, things are going to be no. Set objective targets. Before seeing how much work you have, you need to have very unrealistic goals. or in my opinion, I call them very realistic. You have those goals and you say, I'm going to get all distinctions this year. All right, cool. All right, so how are you going to do that? The first day that you get into class, you already have the mentality of, I can't be doing something regular to get extraordinary results. So from the first day, your mentality is already on some, I need to get, as much knowledge as possible during the lecture. I need to ask questions if I don't understand. I need to participate to reinforce the confidence that I know what I'm learning. Because most people will keep quiet and not participate because they don't want to seem like they're the eager beaver in class. But to be honest, I think sometimes, you're trying to see whether you understand. Like, okay, do I really understand this concept? And then you contribute. If you find that you're wrong, I mean, you get 5 seconds of shame, and then you're on to the next thing. So that thing, I'm constantly engaged in the learning process. And then obviously I shared my schedule, also keeps me afloat, makes sure that I'm already on top, like I'm always on top of my work. But I think ultimately, and I think we said this off camera, whenever you begin a semester, always set, the target that when someone views my results at the end of the semester, they should speak for themselves. If your results need explanation, if you need to explain and say, what happened with this paper is that I stumbled and fell, so my hand was not working well, I didn't write fast enough. If you need an explanation for a certain subject, then you're probably not happy with that result. The results should just speak for themselves. And no matter how hard things get, you need to be able to say my results should speak for themselves. I shouldn't get caught up in, the crowd, solidarity. I know that there's a culture of just complaining about school, which is in some instances very, very therapeutic. Just don't let it get to the point where you start believing that you are mediocre or you start believing that you're average. Always have high goals. And to be honest, whatever result comes after that, you're happy with it because you know that, okay, I set goals, I tried to go after them. Even though I didn't get all distinctions, I at least managed to get X number of distinctions. So ultimately, I think that's it. Like really devoting yourself to just endless, an endless pursuit for excellence, just being able to upgrade, your marks as you go ahead. And also just, as I said, guys, there's this thing of people trying to just get by. And sometimes understand that for some people, they're really satisfied with getting, 50s. And it's fine. Because I think ultimately, it really depends on what you want for yourself. If you're someone who wants 50s and you get 50s, that's a big achievement because, the statistics are crazy already. People are dropping out. Things are hard. You know what I mean? So I really empathize with someone who gets like a mark that, like a mark, maybe like if they target a 50 and say, okay, if I get this is great. I 100% respect those people. 100%. To be honest, I think it's not, as I said, marks are not a reflection of your intelligence at the end of the day. But then it's just a reflection of partially your intelligence, but number two,